Okay, bitch, settle in, because I need to tell you about Inanna. Girl, do I need to tell you about Inanna. When I tell you I was not expecting to resonate so powerfully with an ancient Mesopotamian goddess, we're talking 4000 BCE, honey. But the more that I learned about her true essence, her story, the more that I realized that long before shadow work and healing journeys and journeys of self discovery, there was the goddess Inanna, who wanted to understand herself so deeply she was willing to traverse the seven gates of the underworld, die, and be reborn just to understand the depths of true transformation. But before we get into all of the trauma, drama, lessons, and guidance of one of the wildest myths I've ever heard, let's get into a little bit about who the fuck Inanna is, okay? Because I did not know who this powerful woman was prior to hearing about her through Jadina. Thank you, girl. My favorite intuitive reader just happened to mention this goddess and then became the source of inspiration for my next video in what is becoming a series, an unexpected series, because for some reason, the essence and powers of certain goddesses are finding themselves very present in my life right now, and thank God. Because in my life right now, I need the strength and embodiment of the true feminine deity and divine essence that these goddesses represent. I know that they are finding their way to me because I need to find that source of strength within myself right now. And the story of Inanna is no different, because Inanna was not just a random goddess, she was the goddess. She was the Mesopotamian Sumerian goddess of love, beauty, war, destruction, creation, sovereignty, transformation, becoming. And if you're thinking, wait, love and war? Yeah, that is becoming a common theme. That is becoming a common theme in these goddesses that I am studying, researching, and worshiping. That they are not just the rulers of beauty and love, they are also the rulers of that shadow, darkness, that depth, the weight and heaviness, the badassery of ruling chaos as much as you're ruling your own sense of beauty and self-worth. Much like a lot of the other goddesses that we love and adore, like Aphrodite herself or Gaia that we also talked about, Inanna embodies a lot of that same Venetian energy. We see that evident in the love and beauty that we so often associate her with. They called her the Queen of Heaven and Earth. She represented this raw, sacred sexuality and the necessity of tapping into your sensuality for your own feminine power. I'm serious, her temples hosted literal freak-offs, like a healthier, more spiritually intentional version of Diddy's freak-offs. Yeah, bitch, they were getting down in Inanna's temples, and I love that. I love that so many cultures in history have a way better awareness of the purpose and power of our sexuality instead of trying to dim it down and make you feel like a whore for being in touch with that like they do here. Now, but we're changing that, okay? That is why we are learning and understanding and chit-chatting about our friends in the goddess world, so that we can understand how many lies we've been told and wake up to who we are. Now, like I said, Inanna was the Sumerian goddess of love, fertility, war, transformation, all of those good things. She was often accompanied with lions, and not because she was taming that beast within, honey, but because she was so powerful even the lions recognized that she was above them. She is also often symbolized with the 8-point star, which is just like cosmic authority, divine intuition, all of the powerful feminine essence. That's also why I have 8 candles burning right here. Let's hope that's not a fire hazard that's going to come back to bite me in the ass. There's a lot of speculation about who Inanna's parents are, but she did have a consort. She did have a husband who kind of fought for her attention. I believe he was in charge of like cheese and dairy. He was like a powerful man in the world of cheese and dairy, so good for him. But we're going to come back to you, sir. Now, girl, Inanna, living in her little beautiful world, in her gorgeous little comfort zone, existing as the goddess of beauty, love, radiance, and all beautiful things, suddenly started to feel the call towards the underworld. No, literally, it was one day where she was just kind of living in her beautiful existence, and the whispers from hell itself, Inanna, Inanna, literally beckoning her. Literally beckoning her. The underworld was inexplicably calling her name, and she didn't understand that. She was like, I'm living here, Queen of Earth and Queen of Heaven. Why is the underworld calling my name? Her sister, Aresh Kagal, is how I'm going to wildly guess that that name is pronounced. Her sister was the ruler of the underworld. Her sister was literally the queen of death, decay, and all of those things that are the exact opposite of what she represents, this queen of heaven and beauty and love and light and all of that shit. So her sister, she had that underworld covered. So why she was feeling called to that journey, she didn't quite understand. She pushed it off for a while until the call became impossible to ignore. So one day, Inanna said, fuck it, let's go. Let's go to the underworld, okay? Now, her servant, another name that I know I'm going to mispronounce, Ninshubar, who to my understanding is actually an androgynous male slash female. I learned that Inanna, it was often associated with androgynous and genderless beings in that time, which fucking love that. Happy Pride. It was often said that she had the ability to turn a man into a woman, and a lot of her servants and people that were existing in her space and working for her in her temple and worshiping her in her temples were androgynous beings or gender bending individuals, which I love that. So her gender bending servant, Nin Shubar, faithful as all get out, was helping her get dressed and also telling her the fuck not to go. Because what you have to understand is the rules of the underworld were strict. They are very, very strict. They're like, you can't be there without death. It is not often that a person would travel willingly to the underworld and come back out alive, if ever. That never happened. So her faithful servant was like, yeah, I'll help you get dressed, but I really don't want you to go, honey. But in true stubborn woman power, she said, I'm still going to do it. I'm still going to do it. Adorn me, bitch. So adorn her, he did, she did. I don't want to incorrectly claim the gender of this servant, so we're going to call them they, okay? So they helped adorn her with all of the very key elements that she utilized to represent her power, her royalty, her divinity, and all of the things that she's come to love as representations of her status and wealth. They helped her put on the crown Shugana, I believe is what it's called, just a special little crown. They arranged her gorgeous hair in a specific way. Lapis lazuli, the crystal, was often associated with Inanna as one of her main sources of power, one of the things that she often carried and wore as a source of her power. So they adorned her in a lapis lazuli necklace that had beads that dangled down to her breasts as well. Super cunt, love it. They wrapped her in her royal robe, in a breastplate as well, a little thing for protection. They also put an ointment on her eyes that I'm not sure what that means because that's how it was worded in the poem. But in other interpretations, it was just mascara. It was like makeup. They adorned her face with makeup. Period, bitch. Put on that face for battle. Then they slipped some more jewelry on her, gave her her lapis lazuli staff, and sent her on her way. And then her and Ninshubar walked to the first gate of hell together. Now, as they were approaching the gate, Ninshubar this whole time was like, girl, no, like, please, God, do not go. You're not going to come back. We love you. We adore you. Please don't willingly and consciously explore the underworld just for the fuck of it. The whole time just trying to convince her not to, which understandably so. But she insisted, and as she approached the first gate before she actually entered, she turned to Ninshubar and she said, listen, honey, if I'm not back in 3 days, you have cause for concern. Go ahead and go to the temples, bang the drums, weep and mourn me, put on your mourning clothes, go tell everybody, and then try to get tell the gods to come out and save me. Okay? That's the plan. I know you're scared. I know you're scared that I'm going somewhere that I probably shouldn't go, but I feel an undeniable call, bitch, and there's nothing I can do about it. Okay? So if I'm not back in 3 days, sound the alarm, do all the mourning, and go tell the gods to save my ass. So Ninshubar agreed, because what is the servant going to do to stop a literal goddess? Now, this is when things get really, really interesting, okay? Now, remember when I said that it's her sister that rules the underworld, right? Now, it is not often that you just go visiting your family in the underworld just for the hell of it. So when Inanna knocked on the door, one of the guards to the first gate was like, I'm sorry, who are you and what are you doing here? Now, the reason why she went is up to interpretation, many people say, but, and I'm not sure if this was just a fun little lie that she told to get in through the door, but she did tell, according to the myth, she did tell the guard that she was visiting because her sister's husband or one of her sister's lovers died and she's there to experience the funeral rites. Now, that's just one main interpretation. There's infinite of them, but I have heard that often. Regardless, she told the man why she was there. The man closed the door and said, give me a minute. So then he went back to the queen, what's her fucking name? Ereshkigal, queen of the underworld, went back to her and was like, hey, your sister is here. Your sister's here. She doesn't really belong here. What do you want me to do? Now, her sister, here's the thing. Because this is where the interpretations of the myth get a little saucy. Okay, we're gonna get back to that. We're gonna get back to that. So her sister reluctantly agrees because what are you gonna do? She's determined to come through, but she does say she still has to go through all 7 gates of hell. She has to go through all the 7 gates. She has to complete all of the same trials and tests and pain and agony that everybody that comes to the underworld has to go through. She's not special. So tell her she can, but she's gonna have to do all that. So the guard or whoever goes back to Inanna and says, okay, you may come through. So she comes through the first gate. He strips her of her crown. He says, you can come through, but I got to take that. I got to take your crown from you. And she's like, why? Okay. And gives over her crown. Then she continues on to the second gate. When she goes to the second gate, she knocks. They do their whole little thing. Who are you? What are you doing here? Blah, blah, blah. She says, I'm so and so. She traverses through the second gate. They remove another one of her royal items. Slowly but surely, through every single gate, all the 7 gates, they strip her of her crown, her jewels, her robe, her breastplate, until she finally gets through to the end, completely naked, 100% vulnerable, and super, super weak because she has come to associate these things that she adorned herself as symbols of her power and status. So having them stripped away, she was like, who am I? What am I doing here? Literally in the poem, it says when by the time she gets to the main part of the underworld, by the time she gets through the 7 gates of the underworld, and she's asked, who are you? What are you doing here? She's like, I don't even remember who I am and what I'm doing here. That is how weak she has gotten to at this point. Now, once she arrives, she presents herself to her sister, the queen. But here's the thing. The judges of the underworld, because there are judges in the underworld, the judges of the underworld have a say, more of a say of what happens to you when you're there than the queen does, from my understanding in the situation, because they look upon Inanna, judge her, and deem her worthy of death. So the queen does so. The queen, Ereshkigal, kills her sister, strikes her down right there. Not only does she kill her, but she hangs her meaty, fleshy corpse on a hook for about 3 days, just up there on the wall. Now, when I was reading about this, I was like, why the fuck? Why the fuck would the queen of the underworld agree to let her sister come down and explore the underworld only to then kill her? I literally had to do an entirely separate deep dive and research to understand this component of the myth because I was like, what's going on? And there's a few interpretations because, again, like many myths, this was also 4,000 years ago, literally one of the very first stories and myths to ever be recorded. All things open to interpretation, but the most common ones say, first and foremost, when you come to the underworld, everybody's equal. And it was kind of said that Inanna came with a sense of arrogance, like, I'm the queen of heaven and earth, so I will be treated as such when I'm walking through the underworld. And everybody in the underworld was like, no, that's not how things work down here. Just like when you die, everybody's equal. You don't die and somebody dies better because they're a king than somebody who dies in poverty. No, when we're dead, we're all equal. That's what happens. So they were like, you're not special just because you're the queen of heaven and earth. You still came to the underworld completely on your own accord. You will be stripped to the equality that everybody else is. And when you're in the underworld, unless you're one of the rulers or the judges, you've got to be dead. Them's is just kind of the rules. So when Inanna made it through the 7 gates, stripped herself of anything that made her of any type of royal status or queenly goddess essence, she was just like any other human for the judges to look upon and say, okay, you're dead. You're in the underworld. You are deemed to death. So the queen did her job. The queen Ereshkigal, the queen of the underworld, just did her job because that is just, from what I understand, that is just how it was intended to go. So by this point, it's definitely been about 3 days. Okay, so you remember Nin Shabar, the they-them servant that's been waiting at the doors of the underworld for their lovely goddess? Yeah, it was time to sound the alarm. It's time to sound the alarm, and Nin Shubar did just that. They ran back to every single temple, banging the drums. Our goddess is gone. Our goddess is gone. They literally that was the fucking thing that they did. They would tear their clothes off in agony and put on beggar clothes, like worse clothes. Their clothes for mourning was to take off the things that they would typically adorn themselves with, and they would put on something shabbier, because how dare I dress fancy and stylish when I'm mourning somebody I love? That was genuinely what they believed. So Nin Shubar runs around telling everybody, banging the drums, praying to all the gods, please come save your goddess, please come save Inanna. Now here's the crazy part. Quite a few of the gods responded with contempt. They were like, no, she chose to go down there on her own accord. She must deal with the consequences. So several of the gods said no, they would not save her. But the god Enki, Enki, these pronunciations are rough. Well, actually, according to the official myth, the god Enki created two more androgynous beings that they called Gala or Gala and sent those to go save Inanna. And this was interesting. The way that he said to save her was the queen Ereshkigal was apparently in birth. She was going through labor. Down there in the underworld, just suffering through labor alone, the god Enki told them to go down there and suffer with her, to cry with her, to hold her while she birthed. He literally says, and I quote, "Go to the underworld, under the doors like flies. There Ereshkigal, the queen of the underworld, is moaning. When she cries, oh, oh, my insides, you cry, oh, oh, your insides." Literally telling them to go down there and be the midwives through Ereshkigal's birth, hoping that at the end she will say, "Who are you, lovely servants? How can I repay you?" And then you will ask her to give Inanna back to you. That was the plan. So they did just that. They slipped through the cracks of the gates of the underworld until they got to the main underworld room that the queen was going through labor in, and they sat with her, and they held her, and they cried with her, and they pushed with her until she gave birth. And as soon as she was done, she was like, "Who are you guys? Who are you? How can I help you? How can I repay you for this kindness?" And they said, "Give us Inanna back, bitch. We just want the corpse of Inanna." Now, in one interpretation, it was the queen herself that sprinkled Inanna with the water and bread of life. In other interpretations, it was these androgynous beings that the god Enki sent that sprinkled the water of life and whatever onto Inanna to revive her. But regardless, her corpse was recovered, and somebody sprinkled some magic on her so that she would wake up. But here's the thing, the judges were like, "Okay, you're alive now, but nobody ascends from the underworld without leaving something behind. You can survive, but you have to leave someone or something in your place." She wasn't sure who she was going to give up yet, so she was like, okay, we'll handle that later. I need to ascend. I need to get out of this bitch. So, with the help of these lovely God-created androgynous beings, she managed to escape and ascend through the gates of hell, but not without being attached to some serious demons, okay? These demons were like, "Okay, you can ascend, but we're going to attach to you until you give us somebody else to take down with us." So through each of the 7 gates, honey, these demons stayed clung to her, gnashing their teeth, throwing their arms, doing whatever it is that demons do. Now, the ascension of Inanna is really interesting to me because part of this incredible transformation and the purpose and guidance of this myth was that on her way back up through the underworld, she had the opportunity to receive back the same things that were took from her. They gave her the opportunity to take her crown, her robe, her lapis lazuli staff, her breastplates, and all of the things that they stripped from her. Coming back in Ascension, they gave her the chance to take all of that back. But through this insane experience, she'd kind of started to discover who she was without all of that stuff. So she left it. She left all of that stuff and said, "No, I'm just trying to get back to Earth. I'm just trying to get back to my reign. I don't even care about that shit anymore." So Inanna ascends. She ascends with some demon sidekicks and some androgynous helpers. She makes it back to Earth, honey, and she looks around at the aftermath of her tragedy and travesty and journey and realizes how many people are mourning her. So the demons are following her around like, "Hey, who are you going to give us to take in your place, bitch?" And she's like, "Well, not these people because they love me and support me. And not this guy because he takes care of me. And not these people because they did everything I asked them to and worship me with love." But then they get back to her house and her husband. Ugh, girl, wait till you hear this shit, okay? Nana gets back to her main home and temple to see her husband still on his throne, wearing all of his jewels and robes, happy as a clam, celebrating as if nothing happened. I'm sorry, what? I just went through the literal depths of hell. The literal depths of hell. And you're here still in your jewels and your crown? Oh, no, take him away. And take him away they did. She did, in fact, sacrifice her husband in the place of her and her soul. The demons needed someone, honey, and you didn't want to mourn me, grieve me, and come save me. So sorry, bitch, you're down to the underworld. I'm not even going to dignify him by giving y'all his name. Mostly because I can't pronounce it, but also because, are you fucking kidding me? I've just gone through the identity journey of a lifetime, and you're here like nothing happened. Yeah, I'd sacrifice your ass too. Now, in some myths, they say that he was able to escape that shit, and others, no, he was dragged down to the underworld. And because he kind of sounds like a shitty man, I'm going with the version where his ass was dragged down to the underworld to suffer and die. Now, here's the thing. There are a few things. There are a few things about this story that irk my soul and also activate me in more power and strength than I ever thought was capable. The first being that a lot of the reason why some of the gods didn't want to help her is because, in their eyes, that was a journey you chose to take, so you must suffer the consequences. They literally refused to help her because they thought that she deserved to suffer because she just consciously made that choice. Now, when I read this part of the story, honey, I almost cried. Literally. Because when I tell you that has been a common theme in my life, the amount of times that help, resources, encouragement, and guidance has been intentionally restricted from me because a person deems what I'm doing as something that's unnecessary and the consequences of my own actions, it is a tale as old as time, unfortunately. Literally hanging as a corpse from a meat hook in the underworld after doing something harder than any of them have ever done. And they had the audacity to be like, no, we're not helping you because that's the consequences of your own actions. Ugh, honey, that shit was triggering as fuck because those were the words that I literally heard from my actual parents when they found out that I was homeless. Yeah. So, Inanna, me and you, girl, twinsies. And sure, it is true. She did consciously choose to do something that she otherwise probably didn't need to do. Inanna was literally the queen of heaven and earth. She had an incredibly gorgeous, comfortable experience that she probably could have lived forever with a certain level of satisfaction. But there was an undeniable call to explore the depths and shadows of the underworld. And how many of us can feel that? How many of us were living in a completely content experience before the beck and call of a spiritual awakening became so undeniable there was no choice but to join? I don't know about you guys, but the choice to self-discover, the choice to heal, the choice to journey on an untraversed, uncharted, shadow work-based path, it's been the best and worst choice I've ever made in my life. Wasn't really a choice 6-7 years ago when everything in my system was shaken up to the point where I was like, okay, I need to find a new sense of identity because this isn't working. Literally shoving me, forcing me, calling me into this space of healing. I remember the journey of discovering spirituality, of discovering myself. I was just leaving an incredibly rigid Christian experience. Born and raised Mormon, honey. I was discovering that I was gay and that actually everything I've been taught was a lie and I need to find the truth somewhere. And that was an exciting adventure at first because it came with manifestation and the law of attraction and realizing how magic I am. Then very quickly after, it's not just a journey of magic and exploration. It is a deep dive. It is very often like you are literally traversing layers of hell. There are many, many a time that I believe Earth itself to be representations of hell. My journey these last few years, you guys, I feel like I really have been dragged. Dragged by myself, dragged by choice, but dragged nonetheless. Because when Inanna felt the call to explore the underworld, she didn't know why. She just knew that she was following a call. She didn't know that she was going to be stripped, bare, naked, vulnerable, and then killed and hung on a meat hook. Just like I didn't expect that diving deep into myself, spirituality, and healing was going to come with being homeless 3 times, losing all of my friends, going no contact with my parents, and being basically humbled and penniless to a point where you have no choice but to continue persevering the magic world because dealing with the material is heavier and harder than anything you can imagine right now. Because there are so many times that I have looked back over the course of especially these last 5 or 6 years and asked myself and the universe, like, was losing all of that necessary? Was all of that pain and anguish and darkness really necessary? Was that really the depths and journey that I needed to experience in order to have a sense of transformation and becoming? And when my head isn't up my ass, the answer to that question is a wholehearted yes. When I'm not focused on the pain and agony of it all, the transformation and becoming that was made possible by my willingness to dive that deep into my life is priceless. My sense of self, my understanding of myself, the practice of my sovereignty, my relationship with me, is something that I never could have experienced. Sure, in a lot of ways, I don't have the physical things that I thought learning manifestation and learning the law of attraction and learning spirituality would give me. You know, the light and love version of spirituality that we first become introduced to, until we realize that actual spirituality is the shadows of hell. And this isn't to glorify a struggle, because that's the last thing in the entire world that I want to do. I refuse to glorify the struggle. I refuse to glorify a sense of martyrdom for your own salvation. That's not the type of self journey that we preach here, honey. That's not the purpose of Inanna's journey. That's not the purpose of any of this shit. Sometimes we don't even know the why. Like, to this day, we still do not know why Inanna decided to journey to the underworld. There are infinite essays, poems, transcripts, and psychological breakdowns of why people think that she went down there. But the actual why, we don't really know, and I don't know that we ever will. And if that ain't but a bitch, if that ain't the definition of, yes, there is joy and there is creation and there is so much goodness on the other side of it. But when you're in the pits of the gates of the underworld, when you're in the agony, when you're in the losing of it all, just like Inanna got to the end of her 7 gates of hell journey, and a goddess, a literal goddess, forgot who she was. A literal goddess went through the 7 gates of the underworld, got to the end of it, and said, I don't even know who I am or why I'm here. And to be honest, hearing that, and I'm going to get emotional because I'm a Cancer moon, leave me alone, understanding that even a goddess, not a goddess, the goddess of Sumerian times herself, lost herself in the journey of her shadow. But more importantly, it wasn't about the fact that she lost herself. Because sure, she lost her crown and her robe and her lapis lazuli and her breastplate. She lost the physical, tangible things that she had come to associate with a sense of self, the things that she had come to associate with her identity and her power. But what she realized after she was revived and was ascending, she realized her power was never tied to any of that. It was never tied to her identity. It was never tied to her things and her beauty. It was something that came from deep within that is almost inexplicable. And the knowledge and wisdom that she gained through this experience, pardon for a burp of confirmation, was worth every last moment of agony. I am somebody that is constantly looking for meaning and purpose. I told you I'm going to cry. I told you I'm going to get emotional. I look for meaning and purpose in everything that I do. Everything that I do, everything that happens, I'm constantly trying to find a why or a purpose or a deeper meaning behind it all. And one of the hardest lessons that I've learned is sometimes there isn't a why that can be put in a pretty box with a bow on it. Sometimes the purpose isn't something incredibly beautiful and rewarding in the traditional sense that we would associate rewards with. Because just like Inanna teaches us, empowerment, self-discovery, transformation, and becoming are not the journeys of being untouchable. It is surviving the descent, reclaiming your name, and returning to the world more fully yourself than ever before. And regardless of what is lost in that journey, all of that is worth what is gained in that wisdom. All of it.